bigger, something that matters and can help change things. You want to feel like you belong. We know. We felt that way too, and that's why we did something about it. We aren't just Army National Guard soldiers. We are normal people just like you. But our part-time service in the Army National Guard means we get to be more. When our communities are in need, we get the chance to stand up and do something about it. We get to serve in our own region and help the people we call neighbors. Whether they are in the mountains of New Mexico, the plains of Nebraska and Kansas, the ranches of Oklahoma and Texas, the farmlands of Missouri and Arkansas, or the bayous of Louisiana, we are here for our hometowns. And together, we can make a difference. Take on your legacy. Visit NationalGuard.com to find out more.
Sponsored by the Nebraska Army National Guard. Aired by the Nebraska Broadcasters Association at this station.
Put a frog in a pot of boiling water and it'll jump right out. But put a frog in a pot of cool water and slowly heat it up, that frog will boil. As a metaphor for us and all that we go through as veterans, it's a story that rings true. We learn to endure the heat in silence. We apply what we learn to life, the bills, the job, the family, things we're expected to handle with ease. When life heats up around us, we just try to stay afloat. We let the water boil. Reaching out isn't easy, but you've never been interested in easy. You join because you are not afraid of hard work. You are not a frog. If you or a veteran you know needs support, don't wait until the water boils. Reach out. Find resources at va.gov/reach. That's va.gov/reach. Brought to you by the United States Department of Veterans Affairs and the Ad Council.
The captain, Vershawn Jackson.
When you talk about getting back to what Nebraska football is, the roots of Nebraska football is disciplined play. The roots of Nebraska football is knowing technique. The roots of Nebraska football is never giving up. The roots of Nebraska football is knowing what you're doing on every play. The roots of Nebraska football is picking up your teammates when they're down. The roots of Nebraska football is win, baby.
This is Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Now, here are your hosts, Tom Stevens and Mike Melby.
There we are. We're back again on a Sunday. Husker Rewind. Tom Stevens here. Mike Melby there. Full slate of NFL games. Watch a little red zone in the background. No Husker football game this Saturday. Yesterday. So therefore, undefeated, baby. Gotta like that. It's nice not to have to talk about a loss, isn't it?
I was going to say it's a big week. We're not talking about a Husker loss, so
that's right.
It's impressive.
But we are kind of talking about a Husker win this week in a roundabout way, and we'll get to that. But we always like to start the show with a little action. It is the starting gate, and this is Mike Melby at the starting gate, letting you know all that's happening this week.
It was a busy week. It was announced earlier this week that Mickey Joseph will get a pay raise of $33,350 per month for as long as he serves as the Nebraska interim head coach. 15-year, $300 million media rights deal was announced by UNL and Playfly. It goes into effect next Saturday. So on your mark, get set, go on the Huskers getting an extra $20 million a year. Friday night, the NU Board of take two. Friday night, the Nebraska Board of Regents approved beer sales at PBA. Yes,
go.
Friday night, Albert Pujols.
What do you think they'll be priced at? 18, probably $10.
I would say it's probably going to be what do you think? A 16-ounce draw or a 20-ounce draw, and it's probably going to be $14.
There'll probably be a place where you can get a loan and then buy your beer. Right,
possible.
Next to that.
That is true. That's possible. Baseball news. We don't talk a ton of baseball on here. However, a couple of pretty big things going on. Albert Pujols hit 2 homers on Friday night to join the 700 career home run club. Did it against the Dodgers. Barry Bonds, Hank Aaron, Babe Ruth, the only other 3 that have hit over 700 career home runs. Aaron Judge is still 1 behind Roger Maris for the American League record. He has 60. Last time he Went yard was on Tuesday.
Yeah.
The thing that's more impressive about Judge isn't, to me, the 60 homers and probably 62 or 3 that he hits. It's the fact he's probably going to win the Triple Crown.
Yeah.
He's way ahead in home runs, obviously.
Yeah.
RBIs, he's got an 11 RBI lead, and he's hitting 314. Xander Bogaerts is hitting 315. So
What's
he's only
the
a point
porch,
back.
though, at Yankee Stadium? Is it like 200 feet to get? I mean, come on. I mean, it's
still.
no
no one else is hitting 60.
That guy, yeah, that's true. He breaks his bat and he hits it out of most parks. The guy is incredible.
True.
He's really, really good.
Fourth time in 5 games, Nebraska will open as a favorite against their opponent this season. They are a 3.5-point favorite against Indiana this Saturday. NFL has announced Rihanna will be the halftime act this year. Let's see. Volleyball. Let's do a little Nebraska volleyball. John Cook with career win number 800 on Friday, 801 on Saturday over Michigan State. They swept the Spartans on Friday night, and then what a match last night at Devaney. Goes 5 sets against number 7 Ohio State. Maddie Kubik's leadership on the court and in the huddle after the third paved the way. She led the team with 16 kills, had the match-winning block, and after they lost the third set, she went back to the team in the huddle and she said, guys, we're trying to play perfect. We're trying to do too much here. Just find a way. Who cares what it looks like? Just win ugly. And they did. So heck of a job by her leadership-wise.
Yeah, it was. I actually like that. The fact that they didn't play their best volleyball and they still managed to beat the 7th-ranked team in the country. This is a young team. I don't expect perfection right now. And they're going to get better, right? I mean, they have 9 weeks left. There's lots of time to get better. 6 of the 9 weeks, I believe they're going to play a top 20 team.
Yeah.
So,
you want 7 of the top 20 teams are Big Ten. It's
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Wrapping up with college football. Clemson survived a scare from Wake Forest, winning 51-45 in 2 overtimes. Otherwise, no real big upsets in the top 25. Although we are all that in a bag of chips because we're back because we almost beat Alabama. Texas Longhorns got beat 37-34, and they now sit at 2-2. And yesterday in college football, the biggest win in the history of the Scott Frost era took place. The problem is Scott Frost was not involved. It was his former quarterback, Adrian Martinez, and the Kansas State Wildcats, led by Adrian Martinez and his 234 yards through the air with a score and 148 yards and 4 TDs on the ground, knock off number 6, Oklahoma, 41-34. Huge win for Adrian. I still think he's an average, if that, quarterback. He had a great day. He finally got a win,
right?
And he didn't find a way to lose the game by throwing a pick, overthrowing a wide open receiver, or fumbling the football. So props to him. He's one of the coolest and most fantastic human beings I think anyone would ever want to meet, though.
That's where I really want to start the show, because how often do you see teams that are great teams with an average quarterback? It happens all the time.
Yeah.
Why can't Nebraska be one of those teams where it doesn't have to be Tommy has a career day to beat a good team, or Adrian have to have a career day to beat a good team, or Taylor has to? Why not just hand it off occasionally to Amir Abdullah or Rex Burkhead? Because they were kind of doing that a little bit, at least under Bo Pelini. In fact, that 2009 team didn't even have a quarterback, as I remember. Zach Lee, come on. I mean, that was probably the best team that Nebraska has had in 20 years.
That's probably true.
And they had no quarterback. And we always think, man, if they would have had a quarterback, we'd be criticizing that guy. And that's where I want to start with Adrian Martinez, because it was a career day for Adrian. He ran for 148, 4 scores. He had that big run on 3rd and 16 late in the game where he goes to the 5-yard line. He slides, then ends up scoring basically the touchdown that sealed it. Oklahoma scores again, but they win it 41-34. They upset the 6th-ranked team in the country. Nebraska did not have a win over a ranked team when Adrian was here. It's been a long time since that's happened. And Martinez, responsible for 500 total yards, or 480 when you account running and passing. It's the biggest win of his career, and I would say maybe the biggest win of the Frost era.
Yeah. It's just Frost wasn't involved in it.
He wasn't there, but I mean, he had a hand in it. Obviously, Adrian had, a great freshman year at Nebraska. We thought he would win the Heisman Trophy. It never worked out, but he does transfer, goes to Kansas State. Yeah, they're 3-1. They're not probably going to win the Big 12 by any means, But that's a big, big win for Kansas State, a big win for Chris Kleinman, their head coach. And I'm happy for the dude.
Oh, I am too.
I am so happy for that guy. They're not going to win the Big 12 championship, but it just shows you that if you get some coaching, you can win big games. And it doesn't always have to be, 480 yards. He had to sling it. He had to play great football for them to win that game. But it feels like Kansas State's just got a better culture than Nebraska does, and that's not saying anything. We all know that.
Well, and that's what Adrian
better.
said. Adrian said it in the postgame. The thing that struck me the most about that game was how pedestrian Dylan Gabriel has now looked in back-to-back weeks.
He's not very good.
I mean, realistically, even before Brent Venables called off the Dogs against Nebraska a week ago, there could have been 2 or 3 other huge plays, 2 of them that probably would have gone for scores. If Dylan Gabriel can just, with no pressure, hit a guy that's wide open.
He wasn't very good against Nebraska either.
That's my point. Is he missed 2 guys that were so open they probably would have scored. And he was moving away from a little bit of pressure, but it's such a simple throw. And he airmailed 2 of them on him.
Right.
And there was another that I think he threw in the dirt. So yeah, Dylan, I've been very taken aback at. I thought Dylan Gabriel would be better than he is. And I don't know why.
I guess I was never that impressed with him at UCF. I thought he was okay, but I didn't think he was a great college quarterback. Thought he was a little undersized.
Yeah.
He throws a decent deep ball, but he misses wide open dudes. He missed Greg Stoops on a 4th down play where I was a little stunned they were going for it the way Gabriel was playing. But he had Stoops wide open for an easy first down. They complete that. They probably run away with the game. But handed to Kansas State. They got the early momentum. They got a 14-0 lead, and then Oklahoma came back. But you felt like that was going to be a dogfight. And then you saw Oklahoma kind of tense up, and they weren't getting great quarterback play, and they're not a great team. I mean, in fact, I don't know that I see a great team in college football this year. I didn't think Oklahoma was anyway. But I did see a lot of Nebraska fans watched that game, right? Because it's Adrian Martinez, and Oklahoma just played Nebraska last week, and now they're playing Kansas State at home this week. So you kind of want a measuring stick to see how good Nebraska or how bad Nebraska is. Nebraska's really bad. We know that. But the thing that is glaring is how Nebraska, the fight just leaves them almost instantly if things go bad. And it didn't leave Kansas State when things went bad last night.
That's the thing. Like,
that's the difference to me.
Going back to the Oklahoma game, halfway through the play that Dylan Gabriel went for, 56 yards or whatever in the touchdown, or 61 yards in the touchdown. The first half of that play, Nebraska's hair was on fire. And as that play unfolded, I saw one of the worst angles by a major college defensive back taken towards Dylan Gabriel. I was dumbfounded. I literally am like, where are you go? Anyway, and at that point, it literally felt like everybody's hair just got extinguished, and that fight you're talking about seemed to not be there anymore. Bizarre.
It doesn't take long, and I get it. When you get to the place where you're kind of a little like your coach has been fired, your defensive coordinator has been fired, and that happened, of course, after the Oklahoma game. But you could probably feel it, like you're playing for their lives. But are you really? I mean, if you weren't playing hard before that, I mean, you know what I mean? It felt like Nebraska. What I saw last night, Kansas State versus Oklahoma, was a culture where Kansas State did not quit. And think about this. They take guys from the JUCO ranks, many of them, that have been playing junior college ball, in some cases 6 months ago. So they have some really good players. They get their share of transfers. They've got Adrian Martinez, who's starting. I think, was a Heisman. Obviously, we all know that he was running, had a chance at the Heisman his freshman year. But there's just you look at them and you think, man, they play hard. They hit hard. when they give up big plays, they don't seem to let it bother them for a long period of time, and they line up correctly. They didn't have any turnovers. They had very few penalties last night. The old Adrian Martinez in a Nebraska uniform, we all think it would have happened, and it probably would have happened. In a Nebraska uniform, he would have thrown a big pick six late in that game.
Or been fighting for a first down when it was
right.
It was 3rd and 7. He would have ran a quarterback draw because, of course, that's the only play Scott Frost knew how to run on 3rd and 7. And he would have been 2 yards short. But instead of just simply going down, he's going to sit there and he gets kind of lackadaisical with the football and it gets ripped out.
Right.
And, if it's the end all be all 4th down play, but you had it like that, there were so many times that everything that could have gone wrong for Adrian here did. It in crucial times, and it didn't at K-State. Is it Kleinman and his coaching? Is it that staff? Is it the overall atmosphere, the culture? Don't know, but props to him for having the game that he did. But at the same time, you really wonder what I would love to have him sit down and analyze, because he made the comment that the culture is so much different. He didn't say better, he said different. But I would love to have him, and he probably wouldn't do it publicly, but I would still love to know the differences. What are you talking about?
Well, it's weird because it's not like Adrian's perfect at all. They lost to Tulane last week. And an average quarterback might have won that game, but an average quarterback ain't winning that Oklahoma game. I mean, and you saw in 2 weeks the dichotomy of Adrian Martinez. We saw a lot of last week Tulane at Nebraska. We didn't see as much as we saw him play spectacular games. Ohio State a couple of different times, Oklahoma last year.
Well, the Minnesota game in 2018 or 19 when
Michigan
he was
at home last year. He looked really good. I mean, breaks his jaw against Michigan State and comes back from that. So he's obviously had great performances, but it never ended well. You never saw the 3rd and 18 Adrian version where he runs all the way down to the 5-yard line, then ends up punching it through. And there was just a different confidence. I don't know if you saw the replay of that run. Adrian is actually smiling. You can see a smile on his face as he's running down the sidelines. Like, this is kind of fun. We're going to win this game. I mean, that's the smile that he had, I thought, as he was running down the sidelines. He had just made the first down, and then he slides to the 5-yard line and ends up scoring. It almost is like the 4 years at Nebraska, 3 at Nebraska, like it had all just been lifted from him. And I wonder, was it coaching? Was it too high expectations? Because I think the Nebraska fan base has worn out a few players here or there. Have you ever been? I remember back in the Tom Osborne era, he said after one particular recruiting class that top recruits, 4-star type recruits, would tell him, I'm not good enough to play here. And there's a pressure to playing at Nebraska. John Cook has had that in volleyball. There have been girls that say, I can't play in front of 83,000 people or 8,300 people. I can't. Well, maybe Memorial Stadium. That's going to happen probably, by the way. 83,000 at Memorial Stadium.
I was going to say, you may see 83,000 at a Nebraska volleyball match.
But you know what I mean? Not everybody's made for that. Tommy Frazier is. Bring it on, baby.
Yeah.
But there are quarterbacks and players, especially when you're like Adrian, you have to kind of do it all yourself. You don't have the 90s offensive lineman. I think you can get worn down by us, by the media, the fans. Is there anything to that?
Oh, absolutely. I truly believe there is. It's easy for the coach to go into the locker room and say, guys, stay off Twitter, stay off Facebook, stay off Instagram, don't read anything, blah, blah, blah. And the second the coach leaves the room, they all grab their phones and they all read everything that's been written and everything everybody's saying. And it's human nature. You want to know the what's being said is out there. It is going to get back to them. And the fact that you have so many people that maybe have never played the game that try to dissect and criticize whether it's a coach or a player, something they did or didn't do in a game. It's borderline comical, but at the same time, since there's no repercussions for Joe Fan to sit there and just lambaste a kid or a coach or a whatever. It's I don't know how you get away from that, because I think, Tom, you made the comment to me. It's almost as though Nebraska fans need to just go away for a few years.
Have you ever thought about
and let the team
you know what
be?
I mean? Because we talk about, and we'll get into this probably. Maybe this would be a good time to talk a little bit about it. But Trev Albert said earlier this week the sellout streak's kind of on life support. He didn't say that, but he said it's a week-to-week thing.
Yeah.
So that's basically life support, because you're going to have. It's not that the Nebraska hasn't sold it out; they've sold out their end, but tickets from Indiana always come back to Nebraska, and I think it is now sold out. I think they're good. But it's going to be like that for the rest of the home games. Wisconsin fans are bringing their tickets back here. Whoever you're playing, you're going to have to sell those tickets, and will that end the sellout streak? There's a part of me that says, you know what? Let it go.
Oh, absolutely.
Let it go. Because it's not really a sellout streak anyway. It is, yeah, but the boosters have, for a long period of time, not just, in recent years, maybe even sometimes in the glory years, had to buy tickets at the last moment when they would get them, like sometimes morning of. Oh yeah, here's 1,000 tickets we need to sell, or a Friday before a game. That's happened before, and it's been pretty close. And boosters always step up and say, I'll buy those for you to keep the sellout streak intact. But it's almost like we're clinging so hard to the sellout streak, to the black shirts, to the traditions, that we can't move forward. We're stuck looking back all the time.
Yeah, I've never understood the argument of, all the traditions are now gone, and if the sellout streak ends, then we have nothing. Really? So they're going to take all the trophies away. They're going to take all the bowl game trophies.
I think we get to keep.
They're all going to go away. So, none of the kids currently are going to be able to write, the history of Nebraska football moving forward just because the sellout streak ended.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard fans talk about the sellout streak ending like it literally means the death of the program. And it's like, no, it just simply means it's a different age and time. It's tough to sell a game out these days, regardless, simply because of the world we live in with technology, with the 85-inch, unbelievably crystal clear TVs with surround sounds in people's basements, and a 12-pack of Budweiser that costs them however much money,
not as much as they would pay in the stadium.
Cost them $13-14 for a 12-pack of Bud, or they can go to the game and pay $12 or $13 for a 16-ounce. Oh yeah, that's right. It's not beer at Memorial Stadium yet, but
PBA though.
PBA. But so there's so many, it's tough to sell a game out. If the sellout streak ends, it ends. Celebrate the fact that it was 386 games long, or 387, or wherever it gets to, and say we still did it even after all of that. Then start winning again.
That's why I made the point, and I have made it several times. Maybe we all just need to go away. It's the old story of the kids in the back of the station wagon, the family truckster, saying, "Are we there yet? Are we there yet? Are we there yet?" I was one of those kids, and Dad would say, "Don't make me pull this thing over." No, we're not there yet. It's 400 more miles. Go back to sleep, for crying out loud. But we as Nebraska football fans want to know, are we there yet? And I think whether the coach is Bill Callahan or Frank Solich or Bo Pelini said this. I don't know if I believe him, because I think, Bo Pelini, I didn't believe a lot of things, but he said the spotlight on Nebraska football is more intense than when he was at LSU and when he was at Oklahoma. Do you believe that?
I would believe more than at LSU. I don't know about more than at Oklahoma. I've been down to Norman, 6 or 7 times for games. And the atmosphere down there and the way the media is, and just the history of that program. I don't know, man. I get it. They've got the Oklahoma City Thunder, and the Cowboys aren't necessarily that far away, being NFL fans if you're a Cowboys fan, but and Oklahoma State's right. It's not like you're the only game in town like Nebraska, but that fan base down there is just as rabid and as insane,
as crazy as we are,
and almost overbearing as Nebraska.
Do you think Well, they don't have a sellout streak of 370 plus whatever it is.
385.
385. Thank you. Notre Dame finally gave up on their sellout streak.
And what did they say? We got tired of it being as fake as it's been for the 10 years that we've been keeping it going because we just have our boosters buy the extra tickets.
Yeah, but now, you've had Trev Alberts come with the red carpet experience, and I love what that does.
Absolutely agree.
Allows kids to go to football games. But you could still allow kids to go to football games, and the sellout streak could end at the same time. Yeah. Both of those could be true. I do want to talk about some of these issues with Steve Sipple. Our buddy Steve Sipple is going to be on the show. Have I told you that?
You just did.
I just did.
I'm excited.
Steve Sipple, it's a bye week, so he probably would have said, no way, I'm too busy. I'm not going to deal with you clowns. But it's a bye week, so he probably has a little more time to talk to us, and we will talk to Steve Sipple. I still want to say of the Lincoln Journal-Star.
Yeah.
It's on 3. If he wanted to come back to, I wonder if they still keep like his chair at the Lincoln Journal-Star. And just like you can't sit in it, it's Sipple's old chair.
I thought they bronzed it.
They probably did.
Yeah.
They probably, we could probably go, and find the bronze chair of Steve Sipple at the Lincoln Journal-Star.
Yes.
Do you think they have one on 3 for him now?
I'll bet he's got a nice comfy chair at on 3.
Like if he walked in the building and said, Sean Callahan, I want your chair. He could probably get away with that.
He might be able to. We'll have to ask
Robin
him.
Washington couldn't get away with that. I'm just kidding. I love all those guys. We will talk to Stephen M. Sipple of On 3, and we'll do it coming up next.
At Allo, we think you deserve the fiber things in life, like binging your favorite TV shows and movies buffer-free, next level, lag-free gaming, and video calls without frozen faces. So say goodbye to lag and buffering and hello to super fast fiber internet with dedicated 24/7 support for total peace of mind. Plus, no hidden fees, no expiration dates, and no contracts, ever. From dependable service to exceptional support, experience the fiber things with Allo. Go to allofiber.com/fiberthings and switch today.
Hi, I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you prevent wildfires.
Dude, I've got this. I've been camping since I was 5 years old.
But I am a camping influencer.
You know what? I'll bet you $5. Assistant Smokey, what is the best way to put out a campfire?
To put out a campfire, drown with water, stir, drown again. Then make sure the fire is out cold by feeling with the back of your hand.
Wait, really?
I'll take the $5.
Learn more at SmokeyBear.com.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
When you're high, you feel different. You think different, you talk different, you draw different, you listen to music different, but you probably knew that. Problem is, you also drive different, and not in a good way. That's why driving high is illegal everywhere. So if you're high, just don't drive. Make a plan to get a sober ride. Because if you feel different, you drive different. Brought to you by NHTSA and the Ad Council.
I think it's just vapor. Vaping is safer than smoking, isn't it?
There's really not even that much nicotine in them, right?
One vape pod has as much nicotine as one pack of cigarettes.
My kid
knows it's dangerous. 5.4 million American kids vape, and most think it's harmless. Get your head out of the cloud. Talk to your kid about vaping. Visit talkaboutvaping.org. That's talkaboutvaping.org. Brought to you by the American Lung Association and the Ad Council.
More of the Sunday Rewind is coming your way next.
60% of the time, it works every time.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
And welcome back to the Husker Rewind. I'm Mike Melby. Tom Stevens is, as they call it, efforting Mr. Stephen M. Sipple of On 3. Sipple join us to talk about the coaching search. We'll talk probably a little Nebraska volleyball. We'll talk about Adrian Martinez and his big win yesterday. And now everybody that's watching on the stream is like, wait a minute. When did Melby cut his hair? And when did Tom grow his out?
This is called an audible. It's happened, I'm sure, during early break with Sip and Jake. Sometimes you have to switch chairs because one guy's making the call, another guy's making coffee, that type of thing. Has that ever happened to you where you and Jake have switched chairs, Steve?
No,
Tom, because I can't run the board.
You could. If they ever showed you how easy it is, then you'd go, man, these guys are knuckleheads. I don't know why I didn't run the board. But then they expect you to run the board, right? If you ever run the board, then you're kind of stuck because they want you to do it all the time.
Yeah, there's that.
Yeah.
The main thing is, though, is they talk about my attention span not being conducive to running the board, which is probably.
That's probably true because a lot of people don't even know this. Like during the breaks, he wouldn't be watching to make sure the commercials play. He goes out and does like push-ups for 10 minutes. He does. That's right. Hey, we were talking about it in the first break. Adrian Martinez, probably the best game of his college football career happened last night against Oklahoma. 4 rushing touchdowns, accounted for 480 yards. He wins the game. He never had a win like that at Nebraska. Was that coincidence in your mind, or was that just playing in front of a fan base that doesn't care as much? What's the reason that it all came together for Adrian last night?
Well, I think there's a lot that goes into that conversation. I'd start with his legs look live. I mean, he looks really healthy. He's in great physical condition. That's as fast as I've seen him. That's as fast as I've seen him accelerate in some time. I'd say going back to his freshman year. They're not asking, I think Deuce Vaughn's a big part of that discussion, and the offensive line's a big part of that discussion. You go back and listen to what Adrian has said in recent months, that, he said it, that he doesn't think any FBS team put as much on him as Nebraska. And that's just a fact. I mean, you can look at that statistically and see that's pretty much the case. So Nebraska asked a lot of him. Kansas State's not asking as much. Kansas State has a running back in Deuce Vaughn, who I think he got 116 last night, just over 116 yards last night. Everybody knows who Deuce Vaughn is. He's a great running back, and he had a great night last night. Kansas State just doesn't ask quite as much of Adrian. They got more around him. And I think a lot of that's coming together. And Adrian didn't have a great game against Tulane last week. So I think Adrian, I know because he was after the game, he was asked about it, and he played like he had a little something to prove. So a lot went into that conversation.
Were you surprised, Sip, at Dylan Gabriel? It seems as though I noticed it against Nebraska. He seems like he is kind of missing some guys he should not be missing and making some reads he shouldn't be making. Is part of that maybe new to the system, or is Dylan Gabriel just not quite as accurate and sharp as everybody thought he might be?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's a good question. I've watched him 2 full games now. So, yeah, I've seen a lot of him. I watched that game last night pretty much in its entirety, and obviously saw him against Nebraska. He's interesting, Mike. He's an interesting player to me because he has a gun. I mean, he's a cannon, lefty, but he's a little small, and I think that contributes to some of the high balls he's throwing over guys at the line of scrimmage. I was told, actually, I didn't know much about him. I didn't know much about Dylan Gabriel. I didn't watch a lot of him in previous years, but, they list him 5'11", a little small. I like him, but yeah, you're right, Mike. He's missing guys. He didn't have a great night last night. He had 10 incompletions, I think. I think he was 16 for 26 or something like that. Missed some guys that were open, which he did against Nebraska too. That game could have got out of hand in Lincoln a little sooner, I think, if Dylan Gabriel would have hit some of those guys. I like Gabriel because he can run. I mean, he had the 61-yard scramble against Nebraska, had a key run last night in that game in the fourth quarter. I like him. He's just not perfect. I mean, you don't find many quarterbacks who are. I don't want to grade him down too much, except to say you're right. Yeah. He missed some guys at key moments.
Yeah. Stephen M. Sipple of Online. Is it Husker Online presented by On3? Is that how they say it?
Yeah, that's a good way to do it. Husker Online, which is part of the On3 network.
Okay. Stephen M. Sipple, the legend. I do want to get back to the Adrian Martinez discussion. To me, it's been a fascinating discussion because I think it's gone on far too long in Husker football, whether you're talking about Tommy Armstrong, sometimes being great, sometimes, not so great. Taylor Martinez went through the same thing. Adrian certainly went through that. In fact, it's been a while since I remember a quarterback ending his career at Nebraska on a high note, maybe since Joe Gans. And I think back to the best Husker football team of recent memory, 2009, they didn't have a great quarterback in Zach Lee. It feels like maybe one of the places Nebraska can start a new era is being a little less quarterback centric.
Oh, I mean, I don't know. Football's complex, and I don't know that I make declarative statements like that too often, or I would probably try to avoid it. I mean, make Nebraska less quarterback centric, perhaps. I mean, I think that can happen, and you can make it work that way. I mean, I think about Kansas on the other hand, where they have a lot of the resurgence at Kansas is because of Jalen Daniels. Mm-hmm. And I don't know that I would call them exactly quarterback centric, but he's the leading reason by far that Kansas is making this resurgence. It's funny when you said that, Tom. My mind just flashed to Kansas. Yeah, I mean they're not doing what they do without Jalen Daniels.
That's true.
So I don't know. I get where you're coming from. I just think football. I've contemplated this a lot, and I've contemplated Kansas a lot. People are asking me why. How can Lance Leipold do that so quickly at Kansas? Turn Kansas around, in the second year, have them sitting at 4-0, and with a chance. I mean, a real good chance to get to 6 wins, 7 wins. How does that happen? Well, I mean, I just know there's a lot that goes into it, and it's not. I don't think it's as simple as saying, well, you be less quarterback centric, be more quarterback centric. I don't know. There's just a ton that goes into it.
You mentioned Lance Leipold. Heard a lot about the conversation with Nebraska. Of course, he was on the Nebraska coaching staff in the 90s. How high, and we're not going to find out apparently from Trev Alberts anytime soon, how high on the list do you think he is?
It's really hard to say. I mean, I think he should be high. It's how these things go when it's one man determining basically one man is going to determine who this next head coach is. I don't know what's going on in Trev's mind, and he's playing it close to the vest as he should. I think Lance should be in that top tier of 5 or 6 guys that you're looking at. He would fit here, and what he is doing there does get your attention. And I would say this: it's really simple watching Kansas, and I've watched them now twice. They're really well coached. I mean, they're clearly a very well coached. I thought that last year actually, but they run plays at the right times. The execution is strong. They have good. Like look at their route runners. Look at the route running for Kansas. That's what really catches my eye, is how well those receivers run routes, how well they're executed. Now, they're not very good defensively. That's the thing. And so I don't know how good this story is going to get with that defense. Not very physical. The corners are athletic guys, but they're not very physical. So when they get up against physical receivers, it's going to be a problem. But Lance has done a really almost remarkable job there. And it's not easy to do what they're doing. That's a lot of good coaching. I mean, one other thing I'd say is if you just look at Jalen Daniels, just look at that picture. He was terrible as a freshman. What's happened with him is, I haven't looked into it. I was going to look into it tonight and try to ask Lance about it. Is what has he done with that quarterback? Because he was playing at an All-American level for a lot of yesterday.
Yeah.
Hey, Sip, I want to follow up on the Lance Leipold and just the coaching search conversation with you. I heard 2 names this week that I had not heard before that made me crack up. And speaking of breaking news, we can now add former Georgia Tech head coach Jeff Collins to the list of potential Nebraska head coaches as he was just fired. But Two names that I heard, and I heard about them on the On3 network. Mike Gundy and Greg Schiano were added to the list that include, Chris Kleinman, Kalen DeBoer out at Washington, Mickey, Dave Clawson at Wake Forest, Urban, of course, Dave Doran, Mark Stoops, Matt Rule, Gary Patterson, Luke Fickell, and then pretty much the top four guys, Bill O'Brien, Lance Leipold, Matt Campbell, and Dave Miranda. How is this coaching search been for you and the team with Husker Online on the On3 network?
Just like anybody else, just trying to pick up nuggets of information here and there. But listen, you heard, Mike, what Trev said last week. He said he's read everything on Twitter, and he said none of it's accurate. So everything is to be taken with a grain of salt for sure. I mean, it's just a feel at this point. I don't mind saying that. I mean, we're all people who follow this closely. So I'm not minimizing that, but I don't want people to go overboard either. Again, I don't know exactly who Trev's talking to. I really don't. I'm not gonna lie. I mean, so I haven't delved all that far into it. I know the guys I like, and a lot of them just happen to be guys that a lot of other people like. So, I mean, with one exception, I'm not as high on Miranda. But see, this is where the discussion gets nuanced. How much of the list that you determine in your head is how much of a factor is just the ability to land that coach? Yeah. And there's some coaches that I really like a lot, like Luke Fickell, but I don't really spend a lot of time thinking about Luke Fickell at Nebraska because I don't think it'll happen. I don't think he would come to Nebraska. Miranda, probably a little better chance, but there's just guys like Lance and Campbell that I think are more realistic. So I look at those guys a little closer.
Steve Sipple of Husker Online of the On3 network. One of the reasons that Scott Frost was fired, according to Trev Alberts, his athletic director, is to give this team a chance, maybe to, have a little fire breathed in them by Mickey Joseph, also give Mickey a chance. But in doing that, if you give him 8 games, you may not get your guy because Kansas may re-up on a Lance Leipold, or Chris Kleinman might be taken by then, or Dave Miranda, or whoever your favorite might be. How fine of a line is it for the athletic director between giving Mickey a chance and going to get his guy?
That's a great question. I think that with Mickey, Nebraska would have to get rolling here pretty quick for his name to be serious. I personally think, I'm going to write this tomorrow. I'm going to revisit what Trev has said. And what Trev said in laying out potential candidates, it doesn't really jive with Mickey too much. I mean, Mickey could become the conversation could get very emotional. It could be kind of driven by emotion with Mickey. Emotion and momentum. If he can pick up a couple wins here in the next 3 games, if Nebraska can beat Indiana, which I don't expect, frankly, and maybe get, one of the 2 road games at Rutgers or at Purdue, which I think that's very doable. If he got 2 of those 3, Mickey, I think that his name will get a lot of momentum quickly because it's a very emotional conversation. He has the benefit of that immediate emotion and momentum.
Hey, Sip, real quick then, let me ask you this. Let's say that he does just enough to, you see some changes, but it's kind of obvious he's probably not going to be the guy. Does Trev tell whoever he hires, you have to keep anybody, or strongly suggest? And do you think Mickey would stay if he's not named head coach? If, I don't know, Trev threw $2.5 million a year at him or something that's, to make it worth the while for him to stay?
First of all, it's a good question, Mike. I'd make a critical distinction between telling that coach he has to keep Mickey and strongly suggesting it. It's hard. I think it's always hard. It would be hard if you or I or Tom were in this position for an AD to tell you who's on your staff. I would automatically balk. Right?
Agree.
Yeah, I don't want so strongly suggest makes sense, especially in this age where you have to recruit your roster, and that's extremely important to recruit your roster in this day and age. Mickey and Bill Bush make a lot of sense to keep, if for that reason alone. I mean, they're both very good coaches too. What was the second part of your question?
Well, do you think Mickey would stay if he's not named head coach?
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, it's hard to know that because you don't know what his other options would be.
True.
I mean, I'd have to know. Mickey will probably have some other options, and there'll probably be pretty good ones. But I don't know, if Nebraska can throw $2 million at him, I guess, or maybe I was thinking more like even $1.5 million. Yeah, I think that would sway him. Again, I don't know that Mickey could go get a better job than that right now. A better job than a school saying, we'll pay you $1.5 million to be the associate head coach and passing game coordinator. I don't know. My guess is right now, I don't know Mickey would have a better option than Nebraska. So I think there's a great chance of him staying here. Stephen
M. Sipple of Early Break with Sip and Jake, and now with HuskerOnline.com. Have you sat in Sean Callahan's chair at all? I mean, do they have a special chair? Do they have a bronze chair for you? You could probably sit wherever you want to. You're Steve Sipple.
I just have an office chair. All right. Nice little office up in the post office, the U.S. Post Office.
Oh yeah,
in the Haymarket. Mm-hmm. There's a lot of psychiatrists and psychologists up there too.
That's right. Do you use one of them?
I might have to meander into one of those places one day.
Sip hitting to something. Maybe we're always there for you, Steve. You don't have to use a psychologist or a psychiatrist. We'll always be there for you. Stephen M. Sipple. Good stuff. We'll talk to you soon. Enjoy the rest of your bye week. It's almost over.
Well, yeah, thank you. You guys got a great show. I mean that. And I appreciate you having me on it. Have a good one.
Appreciate it.
Appreciate it, Steve.
See, there, pay him a little money. He says, "Yeah,
he says nice things."
Yeah. Did you mail the check this week?
It is in the mail.
Right.
Trust me.
That's right. I do want to do our Big Ten Blitz. We go through every Big Ten game. We alternate, give our opinions on the Big Ten teams, and then we rank them 14-1. Guess who might be 14th?
Guess who might be 1? Everything in between is kind of confusing, though.
There you go. He's Mike Melby. I'm Tom Stevens, back with more after this.
Working at Continental in Lincoln isn't a job, it's a career. And right now, they've raised wages again, and they're hiring for production operators at $22.58 per hour. And other select jobs is starting at $24.28 per hour, with wages growing up to $30.30 per hour. Continental also has salaried jobs available and great benefits, plus medical and prescription costs at very low premiums. Dental, vision, and life insurance are offered at no premium cost to the associates. To learn more or to apply, go to continental-jobs.com with keyword Lincoln. Come work at Continental today.
I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you out because only you can prevent wildfires.
Hey, Assistant Smokey Bear, call me Papa Bear because I'm grilling up dinner. You get it?
Yes, good job.
So what should I do with all these coals?
Don't just toss them out. Put them in a metal container because those embers can start a wildfire.
I understand. The stakes are high.
Ha, 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 ha.
Learn more at SmokeyBear.com.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
What I know about courage, I learned from my adoptive mom. She said sometimes you just gotta hold on and know we'll get through this. Mom, we are so high up. Hold my hand.
No, you hold my hand.
Here we
go. Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more.
I learned patience from my adoptive dad. All he had to say was,
"Hey, you got this. Just breathe." Hey, we're pretty good.
Yeah.
Might have to start a band.
I got it.
Learn about adopting a teen from foster care. You can't imagine the reward. Visit adoptuskids.org to find out more. This message is brought to you by Adopt US Kids, the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services, and the Ad Council.
Now we're in the service. Back to the Sunday Rewind with Tom and Mike on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
I love this version of
Who does
Boys
this?
of Summer. This is the Ataris.
The Ataris.
Yes.
Huh.
I was never a big fan of the song when it came out.
Don Henley.
And it's an okay song, but this version of it, the little bit punk rock style to it, I just absolutely love.
I kind of like it. I'll be honest, I've never heard it before. I dig it. I kind of like it. I remember seeing the Eagles before. It was probably about a year before Glenn Fry died at PVA.
Yeah,
great show. But it was like a slow starting show for the band, not so much for the audience. The audience was always into it, but you could tell Don Henley was just in a cranky mood that night. He just seemed like he was extra cranky that night. But the crowd, you know how Nebraska fans can be in general.
Oh, yeah.
They willed him into having a great night. They were like cheering so much. Like he just started smiling and having more fun. He's like, okay, I'll do it. Okay, I'm all in. And that's kind of how it.
Okay, similar. And this is the funny part because I have a very similar story. And it was, back in my days with the Blaze and the artist that I went to see, and we did a little meet and greet with him prior. And he literally never looked up at anybody. Somebody come up and go, oh my gosh, you're my favorite, blah, 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 whatever. Can you sign this? And he'd just sit there and scribble his name and go, thanks for coming to the show. Thanks for coming to the show. And we found out that he was pissed at somebody in the band and blah, blah, blah. It was Rob Zombie. And it was the final tour of White Zombie. But I think it's kind of funny because we both have the same kind of story because then the crowd, even Rob Zombie during the show is like, this is insane. We're at the music hall in Omaha and they did the same thing to him. But yeah, that's my background and you're the Eagles and
there you go.
I'm in a mosh pit.
There you go. It's I go with the Eagles, you go with the mosh pit. That's kind of where we stand individually as far as music tastes are concerned. It is time for the Blitz.
The Big Ten Blitz. The Big Ten Blitz. The Big Ten Blitz. The Big Ten Blitz.
Okay, we go around the league and cover every Big Ten game, and then we rank the teams. I'll start with Illinois over Chattanooga, 31-0. Nothing to see here. Chad Brown, 20 carries, 108 yards, 1 TD. Tommy DeVito had 329-yard passing and 3 TDs as well. Chattanooga held to 142 total yards. You really don't learn anything from that type of game, but a nice win for Illinois, who I think they have a pretty good defense.
They're 3-1.
Yeah.
Not 1-3.
And they're one loss to Indiana, the worst team probably they've played so far.
Exactly. Even though Braylon Allen ran for 165 and a score, the Wisconsin defense had no answer for C.J. Stroud and the Ohio State Buckeyes. Ohio State rolls to a 52-21 win in Columbus. C.J. Stroud threw for 5 touchdowns.
Michigan now 4-0 after their win over Maryland. They had to earn it, 34-27. J.J. McCarthy, the youngin', 18 of 26, 2 TDs, 220 through the air. Blake Corum does what Blake Corum does. He runs for touchdowns and a lot of yards, 243 on the ground and 2 TDs. Talia Tagovailoa played really well, but not enough. He threw for 207 yards, 1 TD, and a couple of picks.
13th year senior Sean Clifford led Penn State past Central Michigan, throwing for 217 and 3 touchdowns, adding another touchdown on the ground. Penn State remains unbeaten at 4-0. Sean Clifford is 51 years old.
That is absolutely true. Another guy that might be well over 51, or probably, I think he's been there since the Reagan administration. Tanner Morgan, 23 of 26 for Minnesota, 4-0 now for Minnesota. They bullied Michigan State, once ranked before last week. Mo Ibrahim, 22 carries, 103 yards, 1 TD. Minnesota, 240 yards rushing. That's the most physical team in the entire Big Ten, Minnesota.
Completely agree. A Sparty fan wondered how to get out of that $95 million contract right now.
No, Mel Tucker, boy, he fleeced them. He really fleeced them.
It seems that way. Nebraska's next opponent, Indiana, lost to Cincinnati 45-24. Ben Bryant threw for 354 yards and 4 scores in the Bearcats win. The Hoosiers will bring a 3-1 record, though, to Memorial Stadium next Saturday, where they are 3.5-point dogs to the Big Red.
Hey, look at that. Nebraska's the favorite in that game. Iowa over Rutgers, the two maybe the best defensive teams in the league, at least statistically for a while. Iowa moves to now 3-1 after their 27-10 win over Rutgers. 2 defensive touchdowns. Iowa does what Iowa does. They score on defense, and they bore you to death. They didn't do much offensively. 280 yards. Doesn't seem to matter. 27-10 over Rutgers.
I'm quoting Tom Stevens from a couple of weeks ago. Iowa invented boring.
Yeah, they did.
Northwestern continued to look like the horrific football team that everybody expected to see this season with a 17-14 loss to Miami of Ohio in a really ugly game. Graham Nelson winds up kicking the game-winning field goal from 36 yards out with 21 seconds left. It's the first win against a Big Ten team since 2003 for the Redhawks. Reading that sentence alone, it's kind of nice to have that not be a Nebraska loss that I'm talking about. It's a Northwestern loss because it's been that way a couple of times in the last few years.
Purdue over FAU 28-26. They had to earn it. There was no Aiden O'Connell. He was out with an undisclosed injury. Austin Burton stepped in 21 of 29, 166 and 3 TDs. Purdue, not impressive, but they do improve to 2-2 on the year. So our rankings, how do you want to alternate it? It'll be kind of fun. At number 14, we both have Nebraska, so I'll let you do number 13.
I've got Northwestern.
I do too. And I think this may be crazy to say out loud because he's a hero there. They're about to build $1 billion stadium, Northwestern. Pat Fitzgerald might be on the hot seat if this continues. They're 1-3, and they have bad losses. The Nebraska loss is bad. Yesterday's loss is terrible to Miami of Ohio. That's a bad football team, Northwestern.
Their one win is Nebraska, and Nebraska's just, was in a shambles. Does that even
count?
Yeah, exactly.
I don't know if it counts. I've got Indiana at number 12. They're 3-1. I think they're the best team in the Big Ten. Remember Nebraska? They're kind of similar on the win side.
Yeah.
They're winning games, but I don't think they're very good. They did get beat by Cincinnati, who's a very good team. But I don't think there's a reason Nebraska should be favored next week. Indiana's not very good.
No, and I've got Indiana at 12 as well. Who do you have 11? Because I think we get a little jumbled here.
We get totally jumbled. I've got Purdue because I don't know. I think you could throw them all, somewhere between 6 and 11.
Yeah.
Everybody's the same.
Yeah.
And maybe even 5 through 11, I think everybody's the same. So it's hard for me to figure out. But I've got Purdue at number 11.
I've got Michigan State at 11, and simply because the last 2 weeks, they look like a team that simply doesn't know how to win the line of scrimmage. The effort doesn't look like it has in the past. Something seems really off in East Lansing.
Yeah, and they were 11-2 last year, got Mel Tucker a $95 million deal. At number 10, I've got Rutgers. They are 3-1 after the loss to Iowa. Hard to grade them because nobody's played anybody at this point. But I think Greg Schiano's teams, they're just physical, and they'll hang around. They'll get to a bowl game again this year.
I've got Purdue at 10. I had Purdue pegged to win the West. They just seem that, and offensively, they struggle. So as much as they do, it's crazy to me, but I've got them ranked at 10th.
I've got Michigan State at number 9. They're 2-2 on the season after that 34-7 smashing to Minnesota. That was never a game. Minnesota bullied them. And Michigan State is not very good. I've got them at 9.
Well, and don't forget that they scored with 17 seconds left to avoid the shutout. Did Michigan State? I mean, it's incredible.
I stopped watching way before that.
I read about it. Trust me, I wasn't watching. At number 9, I've got Wisconsin. The Badgers. I don't know. I thought they would have put up a little bit better fight against Ohio State. Yet they got smoked.
Yeah, I've got Illinois at number 8, 3-1. They're a very good defensive team. And Brett Bielema has brought a little culture there. They can run the football. They stop the run. 31-0. I get it. It's Chattanooga. Nobody cares, but I've got them at 8.
I've got Rutgers at 8. Similar to what you said about them earlier. Greg Schiano's teams are going to fight. They're going to be good defenses, and I've got them pegged in at number 8.
At number 7, Wisconsin. Ohio State's really good. I get that. But they had a good defense coming in. I had them much higher than – after that game. They have a bad loss to Washington State, even though Washington State's not a bad football team. But last night, Ohio State led 35-7 at halftime. They could have called the score. They pulled off the dogs on Wisconsin. But that's where I have Wisconsin right now.
Number 7, I've got Illinois. Same thing with Brett Bielema. I like his team. You're seeing an identity develop in Champaign, and I think he's got a pretty solid team.
At number 6, I've got Maryland. They're now 3-1. They fought Michigan, and they can run the football. They played well yesterday. They've got an excellent quarterback, and obviously Tua's younger brother, Talia Tagovailoa. But 34-27, Michigan at home, obviously very tough. But I think Maryland's pretty decent.
I do too, and I've got 5 and 6 flipped, I think, from what you do. I have Iowa at number 6. The Hawkeyes they are one of the worst offensive teams that we will ever see in college football.
But they were
possibly.
last year as well.
I get it, but they seem even worse this year. But with that D, they're kind of the best of the rest or close to it for me. I've got Maryland at 5, Iowa 6. I think you've got Iowa 5, and you just mentioned Maryland 6.
I've got Iowa. I beat you because a couple of defensive touchdowns again.
Yeah.
I mean, they'll beat you with just not making mistakes. Rutgers actually outgained Iowa, but everybody outgains. You or I could outgain Iowa, but you're not going to win the game. At number 4, Minnesota, 4-0, 34-7 over Michigan State. I think they're the most physical team in the West. They're the best team in the West. And they're creeping up on the East. They might be, before too long, the second best team in the East.
Yeah, I've got them at 4 as well, and that's what was the old saying? They're moving up the charts. They're now number 4 with a bullet.
Kasem.
Yeah, and it's, I'll tell you what, Minnesota is a team that looks like they sleep, eat, breathe their identity, and that is just to punish people.
So you got them at 4 as well.
Yep.
At number 3, Penn State. I don't know what Penn State is yet. They beat Auburn handily last week, and that looked like a great win, but Auburn now looks like they're not very good at all. Penn State beat Central Michigan 33-14. I don't know what Penn State is yet.
Same here, and I almost put Minnesota above Penn State. I've got Penn State at 3 for the same reason.
I do
too. We'll see. Time will tell.
Michigan's at number 2, 34-27 over Maryland. They're a physical football team. They run it. Blake Corum's a very good running back. I don't think Jay McCarthy is great yet, but he has a chance to be really, really good, the former 5-star. And then, of course, Ohio State. Yep. They are by far the most talented team in this league. It's not even close. They feel like they're a team that just could score as many points as they want to score. And it was 35-7 at halftime. It easily could have been 70 to whatever. Ohio State. So they are by far the best team in the Big Ten. We are coming back with more. We're going to talk a little volleyball with Tanya Taki a little bit later on. But I want to see what your list looks like. We're talking a lot about coaches these days. Who's going to be the next coach at the University of Nebraska? Mike has his thoughts. I'll have mine. It's Husker Rewind. Back with more.
Hey, buying a used vehicle sucks, and the biggest problem is who can you trust? Hey, this is Carl from Price Right Auto out here at West O Street in Lincoln. Here's what customers have told us they want from us. They want transparent pricing with no games. We have all our pricing on our website, plus a Carfax report. We don't want to buy a lemon. We include a 3-month warranty on all of our vehicles. We don't want to play games. Just make it simple. You saw that with non-commissioned salespeople. Can you trust us? Just check out our Google reviews. Again, this is Carl from Price Right Auto in West O. Check us out at pricerightauto.com.
Steve's Garage Doors and Services is under new management, but has the same great service as before. If your current garage door seems outdated or isn't working properly, call their new number at 402-480-2840 to schedule service or get a new door ordered. Steve's can repair most types of garage doors and can always point you in the right direction to get the job done. Give Steve's Garage Doors and Services a call today at 402-480-2840. That's 402-480-2840.
Early break with Sip and Jake.
I'm sick of the chaos. Yeah, I am too. But some people love coaching searches. Like, they love it. This is fun for them. Some people would prefer that to having consistency and success, which is odd to me. But if you like chaos, that's your own thing, man.
I used to think that was about 3% of the fan base. Yeah, I'm going more toward 25% now.
Early break with Sip and Jake from 6 to 8 every weekday morning on 93.7 The Ticket.
Serve Nebraska believes that volunteers are part of what makes Nebraska great. Each year, the Step Forward Awards honors volunteers from across the state who serve their communities in outstanding ways. We hope you'll join us this year at the Step Forward Awards luncheon on October 27th in Omaha. Help us thank volunteers with a celebration to remember. To register, visit serve.nebraska.gov and click Register Now. We hope to see you there. Paid for by Serve Nebraska. Aired with the Nebraska Broadcasters Association and this station.
Finally, a good reason to have a smart house. Just say, Alexa, play 93.7 The Ticket, and we'll magically start playing. How's it work? Nobody knows. Don't ask questions.
Get it, slip it, cuff it, check it. Talk to doctor now and share it.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it twice a day.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it in the morning and before dinner.
I get it, slip it, cuff it, check it, and share it with my doctor. Nearly 1 in 2 U.S. adults have high blood pressure. That's why it's important to self-monitor your blood pressure in 4 easy-to-remember steps. It starts with a monitor.
Now that I know my blood pressure numbers, I talked with my doctor. We're getting those numbers down.
Get it, slip it, cuff it, check it. Talk to doctor now and share it.
Be next to talk to your doctor about your blood pressure numbers. Get down with your blood pressure. Self-monitoring is power. Learn more at manageyourbp.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council, the American Heart Association, and the American Medical Association, in partnership with the Office of Minority Health and Health Resources and Services Administration.
This is the Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to Husker Rewind. Every Sunday, 5 to 7, Broncos football coming up at 7 o'clock tonight. Following this show, we are the home for Broncos football and the Sunday Rewind as well. I do want to get into our top 5 because I think it could change it. It'll be interesting to see our top 5 right now as far as coaches are concerned, who we want, our wish list for Nebraska football, where it is now versus where it'll be at the end of the year. I mean, you could have coaches that we love right now that just, they might lose 3 or 4 in a row. That doesn't make them a bad coach. Might lose their starting offensive quarterback or they might lose a couple of running backs. You never know what happens to a team, but we tend to grade coaches a little too high and a little too low when they win or lose. But I do want to do our top 5 because I think what Trev said, and he said the big reason for firing Scott Frost right after the Georgia Southern game and not waiting until after the Oklahoma game, and this week in particular, homecoming, that he wanted to give Mickey Joseph a chance to be the voice of Nebraska football, that he wanted to give these players a chance. That's 8 more games for Mickey Joseph. So he's number 5 on my list. I really am anxious to see what he could do. I would love if he had some coaching experience, like Mark Whipple even. He's the offensive coordinator. You see a lot of coordinators in football that have been head coaches, and maybe they think they want to get back into it, as Steve Sarkisian comes to mind now at Texas. But Mickey's never even had that. He's never, he's not been a head coach in, college football. So I just wonder if he's ready for it. But I really want him to do well. I don't think he has 8 games. Let's be honest. I don't think there's 8 games for him, but I think there's 3 to 4 where if he really shows what he can do, turning around this culture and maybe winning some football games, he should be considered as Nebraska's next head coach.
Well, I think he should be considered just simply because of what he's done, quite honestly, in the last couple of weeks. Just in front of the media, the way he's handled questions, he's had some tough questions asked of him, and he never took offense to it. And I mean, you could see when people would ask a question that Frost didn't like, you'd see it in his face. You'd hear it in his tone. There was an attitude. There was especially as things got worse and worse throughout the years. But with Mickey, somebody asked him about, running the offense too fast. Maybe they should have slowed it down. And he's like, that's what my mom says, and I agree. I just like the way he's handled himself and the way he's presented the program. That's the other thing. So I absolutely love your number 5. My number 5 is simply a guy that I think I'm going to put him in my top 5 this week because I think he would be fantastic here. I don't know if we get him because he still has a job right now. I don't know how much longer he's going to have a job with the Panthers, but I think Matt Rule would be fantastic as a head coach here at Nebraska, but had all the success at Baylor, not working out in the NFL. I think Matt Rule is a college guy, and I think I'm going to put him at 5.
So you've got Matt Rule. I've got Mickey Joseph at 5. Number 4 for me is Matt Campbell, Iowa State's head coach. They are coming off a loss versus Baylor, so maybe put it on a sliding scale. But it was 31-24. That was a good football game, and 2 good football coaches with Dave Aranda on one side, Matt Campbell on the other side. Iowa State is a horrible place to be a head coach, and he's made it actually a pretty good place to be a head coach. But he's not sticking around there. I think he's waiting for the right gig. Is the right gig Nebraska? I don't know, but he's still pretty high on my list. He's at number 4.
I got Bill O'Brien at number 4. The couple of years at Penn State, 15-9, I think was his record. Obviously, he made the playoffs 4 years with the Houston Texans. Things got a little strange there. There's some talk about Bill O'Brien's attitude, and he's got a little bit of an ego, and he comes across a little harsh. He's a little rough around the edges. He's at Nick Saban's school for wayward coaches as a coordinator now.
Lane Kiffin did it. Steve Sarkisian did it.
That's what I'm saying. So we'll see. But I got Bill O'Brien 4th on my list.
At number 3, I've got Chris Kleinman, just coming off a huge win over Oklahoma. But Kansas State has done really well against Oklahoma. Maybe we shouldn't have been surprised at all. Adrian Martinez, 480 total yards, 5 total TDs. He was fantastic. He had to kind of go out and win that game, but Kleinman let him do it. He said, go sling it, basically. And Kansas State gets a huge win. He'll always win about 7. It's that old argument. Yeah, he'll win 7 at Kansas State. You give him Nebraska resources. What could he do with Nebraska resources? Didn't work out with that theory as it pertained to Mike Riley. But I think it could work with Chris Kleinman. Had success everywhere he's been. North Dakota State won several national titles there, replacing Craig Bohl. So Chris Kleinman is my number 3.
My number 3 is Dave Aranda at Baylor. I'm going back-to-back, or not back-to-back. I guess we had O'Brien at 4. But I like Dave Aranda. I know his name has popped up in fan circles, but I don't know that anybody has like leaked any, my cousin's nephew's ex-wife's brother who just got out of prison is now cleaning houses for a living and talked to the secretary of Dave Aranda, and Trev called him. I don't know if I've heard any of those stories, but
now you're going to tomorrow.
Exactly.
I guarantee it.
But I think Dave Aranda is an interesting person to be in the coaching search. I wouldn't mind it at all with the success that he's had at Baylor, and I think it'd be kind of an interesting hire.
He's been a great hire at Baylor. They've kind of changed their identity. Remember when Robert Griffin III was there, they were more of a spread offense. That has changed a little bit with Dave Aranda, more of an offense that is a little bit more like Matt Campbell's. In fact, you were watching 2 very similar teams yesterday with Iowa State and Baylor, but Dave Aranda did come out on top. He's a defensive mind. Sometimes when you struggle as much as Nebraska has defensively, that's where you go. And what led them to Bo Pelini, when you're struggling, defense or offensively, then you go with an offensive-minded head coach. But Dave Aranda looks like a good hire. Great coordinator, defensive coordinator, both Wisconsin and LSU, and now he's doing a good job at Baylor. Number 1 on my list, Lance Leipold, Kansas. I just think he is the real deal. Now, if you look at his overall record, even with the wins they've had already, West Virginia, Houston, of course, the victory on Saturday was really who'd they beat on Saturday? I'll have to look it up. But they win that game 35-27 against Duke, formerly undefeated Duke, because that's how they kind of build that game. But I just thought they were organized. Daniels is a good quarterback. And that's the worst Power 5 team maybe in the last 20 years, right? Kansas.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
I don't think they've been ranked since 2009, I want to say. And maybe look for them to be ranked this week. But Lance Leipold, he's a builder, and he's building Kansas.
So you had Aranda at 2. I'm taking it.
I said Aranda at 2, yeah.
Okay.
That was my number 2 after Kleinman.
Okay.
So it's Mickey, Matt Campbell, Chris Kleinman, Dave Aranda, and Lance Leipold.
Okay. So 2 for me, 2 is Leipold, and for me 1 is Matt Campbell.
All right. Why is Matt Campbell so high on your list?
I guess that is simply because that's what I think is going to happen. Is he my guy though? I think there would probably be other guys I would prefer to have in. But that's just kind of where I think this is going to wind up.
Yeah.
At the end of the day.
Do you have a crazy one on
I
your
do.
list? A crazy one on your list that you just think we'll never get him, we'll never pursue that guy, but this is who I want.
I would have made the phone call, and I get it. You can laugh all you want to. There's no way he would even take the phone call. If he doesn't take the phone call, you already know the answer. But I would call Dabo Swinney, and I would say, Dabo, you're coaching in the ACC. There's a chance you guys may wind up in the SEC, or you may not have a conference. And all I'm saying is we're going to get, with our new media rights deal and the Big Ten money from the new TV contract, over $120 million a year, starting in a couple of years.
Yeah.
And it's going to be more than that if probably Notre Dame ever joins the Big Ten. Because you know that wouldn't have been put into that contract if there's not some already some smoldering embers burning there to that happening. But I would have made the call to Dabo, and I would have just said $20 million a year.
Maybe Trev has.
I mean, like I said,
says we're not going to find out.
There's no way he really. I guarantee you, there's no way you would have thought he would have gone to Clemson if he had any clout. Yet he did.
He found. I think he followed Tommy Bowden. One of the Bowden. And remember this. At one time, you had Bo Pelini on the Nebraska sideline, and you had Dabo Swinney on the Clemson sideline. Nebraska wins that Citrus Bowl, and both interim, or Dabo was interim at that time for sure. But Bo wins that game, and you thought he was the bigger name.
Oh, yeah.
By far the bigger name in college football. And obviously he did very well record-wise at Nebraska. I think it was the off-the-field issues that really hurt Bo Pelini. I wonder about fit as it pertains to Dabo Swinney in Lincoln, Nebraska. He's got the slang. He talks like this. I don't know. I mean, you could talk like this for sure and be in Lincoln, Nebraska would be very successful. It just doesn't. What I think of the Nebraska football coach being, Dabo is not it.
No, and like I said, it's just my wild off the cuff. I at least got to make the phone call. That's who I would call.
Right.
I wouldn't want Jimbo Fisher. That's a call I would not make.
I won a national title, but yeah.
That's just not a call I would make, though.
You know, the call that I would make, the crazy pick of the week, I would go PJ Fleck. I would call PJ Fleck and see what's going on in his head. And that conversation would last 3 hours alone, just finding out what's going on in his head.
Here's the funny thing. I don't know how well his shtick would play in Lincoln. What I do know would play well in Lincoln,
winning,
is, well, not only winning, but winning the way Minnesota wins. Minnesota will punch you in the mouth time and time again, and they will let you punch back.
Yeah.
And they don't care. They're the guy that can take the punch. They've proven that since he's been there. They've built that culture.
Yep. I remember one year coming out of the Minnesota game where PJ Fleck said, well, we felt like we could get them turned sideways and we could manhandle their defensive line. Then there was another year, the COVID year, 2018. 2019.
Well, COVID year was 2020.
What was it? The first? Yeah, it was 2020. It was 2020. You're right. When they came in here with 28 guys available.
I thought it was, well, they were down 31.
You're right.
31 guys were out with COVID.
Yeah, and they embarrassed Nebraska here with 31 guys, whatever the number was that were out. And they didn't do anything other than what they do, line up and punch you in the mouth, as you just explained. And they dominated Nebraska. That was embarrassing, quite frankly, because and I like a coach that can embarrass another coach.
Yeah.
So maybe that's why PJ Fleck is on my list.
You know what?
He definitely, with that physical style, I just think he brings an identity. And I think Nebraska so desperately needs an identity.
Okay, so Lance Leipold is your number one. My question for you is, what would you expect Nebraska's identity to be with Lance Leipold as the head coach?
What you see Kansas do, fundamentally sound. Maybe a little more option-based because that's what they do a little bit at Kansas. Maybe it's just because they have Daniels and he can do it. I think it'll be well-coached, physical, tough. Mentally tough, physically tough, and a team that won't beat themselves, which sounds like almost the entire Big Ten West. It has been Northwestern's identity. It has been Minnesota's identity. It's becoming more Illinois' identity. The team that doesn't fit, Nebraska.
Yeah.
The one team among those teams that has not fit with that identity, and the one team that should is Nebraska, because that's what you think of Nebraska football history being. But that's my feeling.
Let me ask you one other name that we did not throw out. I do think it's funny. I read that Mike Gundy is now kind of in the fringe of the world of possibilities or whatever. Greg Schiano might be as well. But I don't know if I would love it or hate it. But live radio. What do we got, Tom? No. Oh. Okay.
We had a caller, and then I lost him. I think it was my brother. And anyway, no caller. There's no caller. No, there's no caller.
All right.
It's okay. It's okay. I thought we had a caller there for a second, but they fell off the line there.
No, but Mike Gundy was one that popped up this week, and I thought it was interesting if the mullet would come to Nebraska, and I don't think his offense would be as successful simply because he's not quite as close to Texas and the talent base down there. And again, we've seen time and time again that air raid passing, the pro style, the West Coast, it just isn't a great fit at Nebraska. But the one coach before your brother called, I wanted to ask you about Brett Bielema. What if we contacted Brett Bielema and ultimately he came to Nebraska?
Remember that whole because the Eichhorst, the Sean Eichhorst hunt, along with Harvey Perlman, led to Mike Riley, right? And I remember the question going to Harvey Perlman because there were a lot of Nebraska fans at that time who wanted Brett Bielema, and I remember listening to Harvey Perlman at that time, and he said, "We did not contact that man, Brett Bielema." Or I think he called him Brett Bielema. And I was going, why? Because he's way better than Mike Riley. Way better than Mike Riley. I wanted that identity. Because you say the name Brett Bielema, and you just think, that's who I know who that is. That's Wisconsin. That's what Illinois is now. They run the ball, they stop the run. It's kind of what the entire Big Ten has done, especially the Big Ten West. Ohio State has gotten away with being whatever Ohio State wants to be because they are loaded with 5 stars. You can do whatever you want to do.
That talent.
Yeah. You don't need an identity so much as we're Ohio State and we recruit 5 stars. Who's your quarterback? CJ Stroud. Oh yeah, the guy that's about to win the Heisman. Because he very well could. If it's not CJ Stroud, it's going to be Bryce Young again, or somebody, along those lines. It's always a blue blood.
Well, and let's not forget their 3rd string quarterback, Cardale Jones, won him a national title.
Right.
So it's not like they're ever bereft of talent in Columbus.
But it's an interesting conversation when you look at the Big Ten and you talk about identity, because I think that's been missing from all the hires of Nebraska football over the last 15 years. I knew Frank Solich and what that identity was. It was going to be what Tom Osborne was. Try to run the option, be really physical, play great defense, and win games big. We never had a problem with the identity because we knew that identity. Then you moved on to Bill Callahan. It was an identity. It was the West Coast offense, right? We take what we want. That's a famous Bill Callahan line. But the identity was you were just terrible at it. You're just that's terrible, especially when you compare it to what had previously taken place, 60-3. And then Frank unsuccessful, but he was 58-19. So that's still pretty good. So then you go to Bo Pelini and you kind of get the identity back, right? Because he had been with Frank Solich. So we know what that identity is. Hard-nosed, tough football, and you're struggling on the defensive side of the ball. So you go get a defensive coordinator type guy, and he was there with Frank, and we know exactly what that was. And he reminded Tom Osborne of Bob Devaney. Remember that comment?
Yeah.
So you had an identity in that hire, I think.
Let me ask you this with Bo Pelini. If he would have had support of administration, you know who I'm talking about.
Yeah.
I mean, the non football. If it would have been a well-oiled machine above him, and he would have been allowed to do what he needed to and wanted to do, would he have been a bigger success here? I get it. Eichhorst was brought in to fire him.
because he didn't have the CEO management abilities. And part of being a
Well,
good
that's what I
CEO
wanted. That's why I wanted to ask is could he, with support of administration, could Bo have been a guy that ultimately got us into a college football playoff? Or would he have just been the guy that was a 9-win guy and you just deal with it and be happy that you're winning 9 and not going 1 and 3?
I still think, I mean, even with, not getting the support from the athletic department, even when when Tom Osborne was his athletic director, he struggled sometimes with the media. He struggled with being a good CEO. He always thought everybody was out to get him.
Well, and that was kind of what I was getting at.
And sometimes they were.
Yeah, but it was us against the world. I would get exhausted as a player to play for him because and this is what we see in the public eye, and this is what I took. It was almost always us against the world. It was Nebraska versus the world, be it the administration.
But that's
Nebraska,
an identity, good or bad.
I get it. But,
and I think he did create that identity. Like, you know what? I think it might have, we heard some of the tapes, right? They all hate us.
Yep.
The athletic director certainly hates us. But it wasn't us against the world. And sometimes it did work. Remember that Nebraska had to win out, and they did.
Yep.
I mean, he gravitated to that identity, and the big Ohio State win, but they win out and get to the Big Ten championship. Then it's a disaster, obviously against Wisconsin. But there was an identity to Bo, at least more so than Callahan, certainly more than Riley.
Oh, big time. There is one coach that has a culture. His teams have identity, and he's won 801 games as the head coach of Nebraska volleyball.
Woo,
that's
good.
John Cook.
That is a good transition. That is so good. Oh, man. Very nicely done. Yes, we're going to talk a little Husker volleyball. Tanya Taki will join us, former Husker great. Played for both John Cook. Actually, first Terry Pettit and then John Cook.
Yep.
How many girls can say that they played for 2 Hall of Famers in Nebraska volleyball history? And now she runs Nebraska 1. She coaches volleyball, and she talks to us on the radio about Nebraska volleyball. So we'll talk to her coming up next.
Get an immediate look back at the game from the people who know it best. It's the Tanner's post-game show and the final word live from Tanner's Bar and Grill at 30th and Yankee Hill. Hear from former players and national champions like Jay Foreman, Rashawn Jackson, and Aaron Davis, and see what they saw in that day's game. It's the Tanner's post-game show and the final word, live and in person, home or away at Tanner's Bar and Grill, brought to you by Bauer Infrastructure. Only here on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Hi, I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you prevent wildfires.
Dude, I've got this. I've been camping since I was 5 years old.
But I am a camping influencer.
You know what? I'll bet you $5. Assistant Smokey, what is the best way to put out a campfire?
To put out a campfire, drown with water, stir, drown again. Then make sure the fire is out cold by feeling with the back of your hand.
Wait, really?
I'll take the $5.
Learn more at SmokeyBear.com.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
If you came across someone struggling with hunger, how would you recognize them? By their clothes, their age, the way they speak? Would you notice a 16-year-old boy who got his first job,
not for extra spending money, but to help feed his little sisters?
or a mother who's in between jobs and sometimes goes to bed hungry so her kids can have dinner? Or a 14-year-old girl who signs up to every after-school activity, not to make friends, but just to get something to eat? Or a retiree who fell ill and had to choose
between getting medicine or groceries.
I am the 1 in 8 Americans who struggle with hunger. People you pass by every day but never knew were hungry. I am hunger in America.
Hunger can be hard to recognize. Learn why at IamHungerInAmerica.org. Brought to you by Feeding America, 200 Food Banks Strong, and the Ad Council.
People do some pretty cool things in their 40s and 50s. Why should saving for retirement be any different? I mean, they go back to college, learn new instruments, start skateboarding. Whoa! Okay, maybe that one's not for everybody, but saving for retirement is. With aceyourretirement.org, you can get on track with your retirement savings no matter your age. Just have a 3-minute chat with Avo, the friendly digital retirement coach from AARP. You'll get personalized recommendations based on your input that are easy to understand and work with your lifestyle. It's quick, easy, and free. Plus, it's sponsored by AARP, so you know they got your back.
Woohoo! Gnarly move, Dad.
Thanks, sweetie.
So wherever you are in your retirement savings journey, head to aceyourretirement.org and start chatting with Avo today. That's aceyourretirement.org. A message from AARP and the Ad Council.
This is Sunday Rewind on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com. Now, here are your hosts, Tom Stevens and Mike Melby.
Welcome back. Tom Stevens, Mike Melby there, former voice of the Lincoln Stars. Time to talk a little Husker volleyball. They improved to 9-1 last night after a really great match. It went 5 sets as Nebraska drops number 7, Ohio State, in front of 8,300 at the Devaney Center. Lindy Krause, nice game, 9 kills. Whitney Lonstein, another good performance. But just one of those team type of things. It was ugly. It was a little bit ugly at times, Mike, but they got it done. And we welcome in Tanya Taki, one of the greats of Husker volleyball history. How would you grade the Husker performance from last night?
Well, I mean, from my vantage point where I'm looking from, like, instead of watching the game east to west, I'm looking from the south looking north, so I'm watching the sets. And it's really hard to be a fan and know the game when I feel like we have some amazing pin hitters, and I just don't know if we're getting the ball. I don't want to say high enough, but that's the only word I can come up with. Just high enough to be let the hitters be creative, give them a chance against a big block. That's my vantage point view.
Interesting. One thing I want to ask you about, Tanya, is the super sophomore, is what I'm going to call her, Whitney Lonstein. Yeah. She started out hair on fire, absolutely dominant, like scary dominant. She hits harder than anybody, I'm going to say, since Michaela Fecke. It's insane. She had a bad match on Friday. She didn't play her best. She struggled. And she came back last night, improved a little bit. But talk about what it's like to get on a roll like that. And as a youngster, how do you think she responded to maybe, not a great match on Friday?
Yeah, I mean, every hitter is going to have those matches where, the other team, they know that what she can do, and they're scouting her and they're taking away her favorite shots and they're leaning her way. And I just don't know that the setting put her in position to be successful. Watching a racehorse or watching ballet or watching something where it's just like you can tell when they're hit their stride, but when like a racehorse has to like back up to move left or something like that, that's just what I felt like, even from Maddie Kubik. Maddie Kubik, it looked like she was coming in hot, and then she'd have to like take a step backwards and over to the side and reach for a ball. And I just think Maddie Kubik might just be more experienced player where she can find another shot, where I think Whitney just wants to unload on balls, and she just doesn't quite have that little it factor to make something out of nothing. And I feel like last night the setting put the hitters into position where they had to make it happen instead of a setter who's going to put the ball in position to allow that to happen, if that makes any sense.
Former Husker great Tanya Taki, our guest, talking Husker volleyball. And you talk about all the hitters. It reminds me of watching almost Duke basketball, where one 5-star after another comes into the game. And sometimes it's difficult to get a flow when so many talented guys are on the floor at the same time. There's only one basketball. You got Whitney Lonstein. You've got Maddie Kubik. You've got, obviously, you've got hitters galore. Lindsey Krause can really hit. Batenhorst can hit. Is it possible that there's not enough swings sometimes to go around?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be part of the consistency factor. Coach Cook talked about how, as a 6-2 setting system, your setters aren't getting into a rhythm. And I just felt like last night, and even actually the night before, our hitters just weren't going after balls like a racehorse, like a ballet dancer, just being in system, being in flow. They had to change up. They had to drop their elbow. They had to roll shot. They had to tip. They had to throw. And I just didn't feel like we're hitting on all cylinders, if that makes sense, when it comes to hitting. And part of that is, being a setter who can put a ball up that a hitter can go after and make something happen. That can be part defense and part passing as well. But just watching our hitters have to like pick up in the giddy up so before they can make a swing. I just felt like last night there was only 2 swings where I was like, yep, that's Whitney Lowenstein. And 2 swings where it was like, yep, that's Caitlin Horde. And 2 swings where Becca Alec just was like, yep, that's Becca Alec. And everything else was just like, man, we could be so good. Man, we can be so good. And to walk out of the Devaney last night frustrated when we're 3 in the country and we beat a number 7 in the country was such a weird feeling. It's like, dang it, I want to be excited. Like, we just won a great match. That was amazing. Good for them. Like, woo! But I just think what our team is capable of, just watching those moments of greatness, that's where the frustration comes in as a fan that understands the game. But I also felt like this last year, and we made it all the way to the championship game.
Well,
so I think that's part of it.
And Tanya Taki joining us, one of the best middle blockers in school history. Tanya, you say that, and you played for Coach Cook, and you know as well as I do that his teams don't necessarily play their best volleyball in September and early October, and there are 9 weeks and 18 games to figure out how to get the sets a little bit higher, a little bit more on point, and you've just seen the track record over and over with his teams that you expect it to happen. I want to pick on one play that I was blown away by last night that I want to know why it does not happen more often. Ani Evans, I believe it was in the 5th set Becca Alec. It was one of the quick sets where from the time the ball left Ani's hands until when Becca smashed it was literally half a second. Why does that play not happen more often? Because to me, it's one of the most difficult to defend in volleyball.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I've been talking, that's what I've been saying this last 3 or 4 minutes, was just being able to put your setters in a successful spot. And the nice thing about Ani and Becca is that they played high school ball together. They played club ball together. So they have a timing and a rhythm that maybe other girls are still developing with their setters. And so I think that's something special between those 2 girls that I think, let's highlight that. But we also need to have the pass there. And props to Ohio State. Like, those girls work so hard. And those coaches have those girls working so hard. And you can just see the love and desire and, like, team chemistry that team has. I mean, the head coach and the assistant coach has their toes on the sideline, is, encouraging their players. They're reaching out and giving high fives and patting on them on the back while, the other team is going back to serve. Like, they are in it and on it, and those girls are working hard. So our team was not able to put up the greatest passes to have those quick plays run, and that you're not going to have those plays as much in a, top 10 matchup. The night before, where we're playing a team that isn't as great and doesn't serve as great, doesn't hit as great, we were able to just kind of roll over them. Where you play teams that have that stronger serve, stronger hit, you're not going to have those connections as much. The connection gets stressed even more, and that's what's stressed on our team to start with.
Former Husker middle blocker, one of the best ever, Tanya Taki, our guest. The 6'2" still interests me, and now you have the injury to Nicklin Hames, so she's going to be sidelined. So Kennedy Orr is back in the lineup with Ani Evans. How difficult is it to you talk about sets and not getting them high enough, or where the hitter can really do something with the ball? How far away is Nebraska as far as the setting position is concerned in your mind?
I'm not gonna throw anyone under the bus as far as like there's no hope or we need to do something different. I just think that that's something that it comes with confidence and reps. And I know the setters coach in the past was Tyler Hildebrandt, and he left, and that left some young setters without their direction that they were on, a path that they were on. And so Coach Cook and Kelly Hunter are kind of taking him on a different path. And so it's hard for me to say like a timeline to say, hey, if we just did this or we just did that. I coach 12-year-old volleyball. There's some interesting sets out there, but how do you develop that over the course of a season? I think that comes with confidence and reps and just getting those successes. And obviously having a big win against Ohio State is going to put some confidence under those players. I don't like to see the double calls. I don't like to see the spin sets coming out of our hands. Like, we are talking about top 10, top 3 in the country. Our setter should be on point. And so that's where it's hard for me to watch. But, the coaches have done amazing things with players, and we just have to sit back and trust that it's going to come along as the season goes. And maybe we get Nicklin back. I haven't heard any specific details. If, is she out for months? Is it a couple weeks? Like, I don't know if you guys heard anything.
No, it's been kind of quiet, and we were kind of hoping maybe you had heard something.
Right.
And,
I know. Sometimes with injuries, they kind of hide behind the HIPAA rules and stuff, and that they don't talk about it, which I completely understand.
Well, and if you want to see some interesting sets, then I'll start playing sand volleyball again, and you will see some interesting sets.
Yeah.
I was not great at setting. I may have almost broke my nose once.
Art. I mean, definitely setting is an art, and it's just something that, when you got it, you got it. And I think that Kennedy especially had it in high school, and she played on the junior national team. She came into college, had some injuries, worked on a different form potentially. That's just kind of what people are saying. And those two, being injured and changing forms, just hasn't been the right, push forward to be as amazing as she was maybe a year or two ago. So I'm hoping that she can come back from injury and changing form to be, back to the best setter in the country at her age division.
It'd be nice, because I don't think Kelly Hunter has any eligibility left. So I think we're done on that.
That would be great if we could have somebody like Kelly back.
Hey, and I
or
got it.
Just have Nicklin back.
Yeah,
that would help too.
Yeah.
I got to ask you one other quick question. I think, Tom, you're about to wrap it up, but Tanya, I've got to say, I need your analysis on Lexi Rodriguez's kill last night.
The overpass.
Well, yeah, when she had the dig, and Ohio State thought it was going to go out, and it did not. It technically was a kill. Yeah. I mean, how about that? Amazing play. Do they practice that?
That's just kind of a mental thing. I coach, like I said, 12 and 13-year-old volleyball, and we play the close ones. Like, if you aren't sure, you play it, especially if it's an easy ball like that. Obviously, if it's a hard-driven Whitney Lauenstein ball and you think it's going out, and if you reached for it, it's going to grandma in the stands, then let it go. But on an overpass, easy lollipop free ball, you play the close ones, especially in set 5.
You're with Nebraska 1. How are things going there, Tanya?
We are in the middle of our fall season. We just had our second and third grade 4-on-4, where we modify the game. So it's a serving relay, a pass that hit relay, and then they get to play 4-on-4. And I'm not sure I've seen that many excited people besides after we got a block after the 5th set at Ohio State. Lots of excited people with little tinies playing volleyball. So
nice.
It's good season for us.
We appreciate the time. We'll talk to you hopefully next week. Thanks, Tanya.
Yeah, sounds great.
There you go. Tanya Taki, one of the best middle blockers in Nebraska volleyball history and coach of Nebraska 1.
The thing that strikes me in our conversations with her is she's able to talk at a level that I can understand, and that a
that's
fan
saying something.
That a fan,
if we can understand
exactly
it,
that a fan can understand. She will simplify it enough to where an average fan of volleyball can understand and gain insight into the game. Like, I've learned things talking to her. It's fantastic.
And she's got some real passion for it. I mean, she really, she bleeds Husker red. That's there's no doubt about that. Tanya Taki. Let's get to break and come back with more. It's Husker Rewind. He's Mike Melby. I'm Tom Stevens.
An entire week celebrating Lincoln's Craft Brewers is just around the corner. September 26th through October 2nd is Lincoln Craft Brew Week. Head to lincoln.org/beer tour for a complete schedule of events at your favorite local establishments. Brought to you by the Lincoln Convention and Visitors Bureau.
Landmark Implement, your local John Deere dealership, is searching for mechanics of all skill levels to grow with us. Landmark offers a competitive wage, full benefits package, along with paid time off within just 60 days of employment, as well as a 401k and a boot and clothing allowance. Interested in becoming a part of the Landmark difference? Apply now at landmarkimp.com/careers or contact Deanna 402-310-7561 or email careers@landmarkimp.com. That's landmarkimp.com. Landmark Implement is an equal opportunity employer.
Early break with Sip and Jake.
I'm sick of the chaos.
Yeah, I am too.
But some people
love coaching searches. Like, they love it. It's just fun for them. Some people would prefer that to having consistency and success, which is odd to me. But if you like chaos, that's your own thing, man.
I used to think that was about 3% of the fan base. Yeah, I'm going more toward 25% now.
Early break with Sip and Jake from 6 to 8 every weekday morning on 93.7 The Ticket. Back to the Sunday Rewind with Tom and Mike.
That's old school. Yeah? No school like the old school.
On 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
As an 18-year-old, I let my mistakes kind of take over my life. I was 0.5 credits away from completing high school, and I didn't do it.
10 years later, at age 28, Jackie finished her high school diploma.
When I found out that I was pregnant, I know that I had to do something for myself if I wanted to make her a better person and provide a better life for her. My family never stopped pushing for me to be better because they knew what I could become and who I could become as a person. My support team is amazing. The educational director, my sister, and even my 7-year-old daughter has just been more than the support that I could ask for. I've been given an opportunity, and I'm just thankful for it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Hi, this is Pastor Tom. Did you know there's a place kids can seek out help when they're away from home and something goes wrong? They find themselves in a difficult spot or even a dangerous situation. Maybe another child is bullying them or a stranger is following them. Perhaps on a date and things just go bad. In Lincoln, here's where they can find help. It's called Safe Place. Safe Place is a national program for children taking place in thousands of cities across the United States. The People Seeding Mission is sponsoring this program in our community and has set up a number of businesses, fire stations, schools, and nonprofits around the city to become safe locations where kids can seek out help. They just need to look for the big yellow sign that says Safe Place on it. Then go inside and ask for help. We will be quickly connected to them and ensure they make it back home or to whatever resources are needed. If you'd like to find out more about Safe Place and ways in which you can get involved, just go to pcmlincoln.org. Remember, when we all do a little, we change a lot.
Tractor Supply is looking for full-time team members for their Waverly Distribution Center. Applicants can expect a 3- and 4-day work week schedule with additional overtime days with both day and night shift schedules available. Stand-up forklift and high-reach forklift experience is a plus for open positions, but they're willing to train for those without experience. At Tractor Supply, they work hard, have fun, and make money. Apply today at tractorsupply.jobs.
I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you out because only you can prevent wildfires.
Hey, Assistant Smokey Bear. Call me Papa Bear because I'm grilling up dinner. Did you get it?
Yes, good job.
So what should I do with all these coals?
Don't just toss them out. Put them in a metal container because those embers can start a wildfire.
I understand. The stakes are high.
Ha, 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 ha.
Learn more at SmokeyBear.com.
Brought to you by the U.S. Forest Service, your state forester, and the Ad Council.
Now we're in a service. Rewind back to the Sunday Rewind with Tom and Mike on 93.7 The Ticket and theticketfm.com.
Welcome back to the Husker Rewind. I'm Mike Melby. That's Tom Stevens here on 93.7 The Ticket, theticketfm.com. I want to take a second. I want to tell you about two good friends of mine, Tim and Lee Kramer. They own a company called Kramer Concrete, and they worked for another concrete company for a long time, got a ton of experience. They said, let's do this on our own because we think we could do it the right way. We could be a little bit more affordable. They are. They're quick on their quoting. Their work is immaculate, and it's just the only concrete company you need to call. If you need driveway work done, you need a front walk, you need sidewalk done, you need a patio poured, you need an egress window. They do it all. They design it all. They'll help you out. They'll work with you every step of the way. Tim and Lee at Kramer Concrete, 402-560-0670.
Can I mention a podcast that we're doing as well?
You
I know
should.
you're about to finish up your backyard, by the way, right?
We are, in promotional consideration paid for by Kramer Concrete. And the podcast is Nebraska Gems.
That's right. Maybe we'll do a few on the porch from your brand new porch from Kramer Concrete at some point. We could definitely do that. I might have a beverage with you after the show. And speaking of beverages, well, we'll get into the beer thing, but I do want to mention Nebraska Gems before we do that. We've been doing a podcast for a while. I mentioned the beverages because you interview a guy on a regular basis now, Jim Ballard,
seems like it.
of James Arthur Vineyards, who has an amazing Nebraska vineyard. And we're going to be, talking more and more, I think, as the days and weeks go along with James Ballard. But he has an amazing story. He's one of the stories that we share at Nebraska Gems. Eric Strickland, who, of course, of on the block with Bach and Strickenbach. But we've got Rick Swigert, of course, James Ballard,
Clayton Anderson.
I mean, just numerous really cool interviews.
John
and you get to know the people inside of the people, if that's possible.
Yeah.
There's a person, then there's somebody inside the person, and we try to get to know them
and
at a deeper level.
And a joke on one of our early podcasts turned into what we are now going to do as a feature called Quick Gems. And Jim Ballard and I made the joke that we could do an episode on your wine names because you've got these really kind of crazy wine names. And I had over a dozen people reach out to me and go, well, when is that going to be? So I said, well, you know what? Let me call Jim and find out when that's going to be. And we just dropped it last week. First Quick Jim. It's the story of the wines out at JAV.
Nice.
Pretty interesting, but that's going to be a new feature on Nebraska Gems called Quick Gems.
Wherever you get your podcast, nebraskagems.com. Beer is coming to Pinnacle Bank Arena. It's already there, obviously, for any concert that is at PVA. But they've had the taps available and could have done it for Nebraska basketball and just haven't for one reason or another so far. Now going into the 7th, 8th year, whatever it is at PBA. When did it open?
I thought it opened in
2014 or
I thought it was
13?
2012.
Maybe it was 2012.
I don't know.
Whenever it opened. No Sit Sunday, I always think is one of the first years, but it's probably not. But no beer, not that they need it because it's a great environment. And I don't want to be Creighton necessarily, and just because Creighton has beer, but beer is the thing in college sports. And it's already got the taps available. So they had no problems when they did the Big Ten wrestling meet there. I think that was kind of the trial run. Didn't have a lot of people get unruly or any problems with the service in general. So they're going to try it for the Nebraska basketball season this year. What do you think?
I think it's fantastic. And if the season goes the way last season did or the season before, then it will help. That's kind of being mean. Bottom line is we hope Fred Hoiberg and the Huskers and Amy Williams and the Husker women's teams have a ton of success this year. I think it's overdue. I wish they would have alcohol sales at Memorial Stadium. And obviously Haymarket Park is already routed for it with the taps. They've got the bottoms up beer tap system, which sometimes are a little fickle. My 4 years of bartending out there reminded me, I'm an expert on how to fix those stupid things, but it's to argue that people are going to get out of hand and you're going to get, crazy people wildly drunk. No, you've had alcohol at professional sporting events for years and concerts for years and
at PBA for years.
Yeah. PBA for years. And people tailgate and it's just an amenity that I think people want. Police it. Make sure that the kids under 21 cannot get a beer. Do your best to do that. But I think it's a long time coming. I'm glad it's there. I can't wait till it's in Memorial Stadium and Haymarket Park, and Nebraska fans can just enjoy a beverage of their choice.
And a lot of Big Ten schools do. I would say the majority do. I actually done a study, but I know Minnesota, for example, has it. I think Iowa has it. I think most Big Ten schools have beer at their football games and their basketball games. Nebraska is now trying it for basketball. I think the next step right now, you're hearing Trev Albert say, we just don't have the infrastructure for it. It would be a mess if we tried it right now. I know it worked out pretty well for Garth, but they made allowances for whatever they needed to in that instance. And we know that Tom Osborne's probably not the biggest fan of selling beer inside a Memorial Stadium, let alone PBA.
Yeah.
I wouldn't imagine he's very happy about it happening at PBA, but it's already happened there for concerts. So now they're going to try it for basketball. And if it goes well, probably keep it forever.
I would assume, yeah.
Even if it doesn't go great, I'm imagining that they'll somehow decide to keep it. I do want to hit on this before we leave and hit you with Broncos football, because they do kick it off at 7:20 tonight. We are your home for the Broncos. He is Mike Melby. I am Tom Stevens. Together, it's Husker Rewind. We do it every Sunday from 5 until 7. But Mickey Joseph, the interim coach at Nebraska, mentioned this as it pertains to recruiting. He says, we've got to recruit like we're going to be here. That's the right thing to do. We're going to do the job the right way, and we're not going to sabotage this place, which I thought was an odd thing to say. Maybe somebody asked about sabotage in the question. I didn't see the question. But he insists that he doesn't recruit Mickey Joseph. He says, you don't sign the coach. They sign with the university. And we don't get the job and then have them if we don't get the job, we want to leave this place in a better place. I mean, he's saying all the right things. I would imagine there have been a lot of coaches that know that they're not going to get fired, their interim basis. There's somebody else on the list, and you just go through the motions. But I actually believe Joseph when he's saying, hey, we're recruiting for Nebraska, not for Mickey Joseph or for anybody else.
Well, and what else would you expect him to say? Because he is Mickey Joseph, and everything that he's done in his life and his career and all that. He's always been a man of his word. And don't forget, Mickey Joseph is a part of the brotherhood of former players that want so bad.
He played here
for this program.
Even if it's not him.
He wants this program to be successful, to be competing for conference titles and to be competing for national titles, getting into the college football playoff, making a noise, and being something to be proud of your alma mater. The guy, he bleeds Husker red. He's truly a genuine guy that I'm proud that he's our interim head coach. If he gets some wins and we see, and it's pretty obvious to all of us, he's the guy. I hope he's the guy. If he doesn't wind up being the guy, personally, I hope we figure out a way to keep him around. I like him at Nebraska. I like what he does for Nebraska. I like the way he represents our program and he represents himself.
I think they're I don't know. I think Sam McEwen wrote the article today, since the last 10 years or something like that. When coaches are fired, the interim coaches, 30 interim Power 5 coaches in the last 10 years have taken over. 6 have been hired permanently. I think that was the stat. 6 hired. And so the odds are not very good for Mickey. When it's going south for a number of reasons, and you just move on. But it would be a great story if he's somehow able to turn this ship around and become the next football coach of the University of Nebraska. I think it'd be every bit as good as the story of Scott Frost coming home.
I think it'd be a better story, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm rooting for it. I hope he does it. But as it pertains to the recruiting class, you can sign December 15th. Will he be here by then? Nebraska was doing okay in recruiting. Then they slipped a little bit. But Cameron Linhart, the defensive end, decommitted from Nebraska. Now Nebraska 49th and 11th in the Big Ten. So not in the best situation recruiting wise. Even if Mickey gets the job, it's going to be tough to keep this class together.
Well, and that's the whole thing. We're sitting here on the 24th or whatever of September, 25th of September. This recruiting class is going to look totally different when the dust settles on the coaching search, whether it's Mickey, whether it's Dave Miranda, whether it's Matt Campbell, whether it's Lance Leipold, whether it's Matt Rule, whether it's Mike Gundy, whether it's Dabo Swinney, whether Nick Saban says, forget Alabama, I'm going to Nebraska. Yeah. The recruiting class is going to totally change once the new coach is named. I think the Nebraska kids, the Sam Sledges, they're probably going to stay committed. They did commit to the school.
Sure.
They want to be here regardless and build it back better, and
faster,
we'll see how
stronger.
everybody else. Exactly.
I still have hope for the season. Maybe I'm crazy, but you beat Indiana. Nebraska is a favorite against Indiana, who's 3-1 on the season, but not a good football team. I think I saw enough of them against Cincinnati to believe that on Saturday. We are leaving. Broncos football is coming up next with Dave Logan and the gang. You a big Broncos fan at all?
I am not. I'm a Cowboys fan.
I'm a Vikings guy, but we can listen.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll listen. It's coming up next. We'll be back next week. Bye-bye.
See you.
Tractor Supply is looking for full-time team members for their Waverly Distribution Center. Applicants can expect a 3- and 4-day work week schedule with additional overtime days, with both day and night shift schedules available. Stand-up forklift and high-reach forklift experience is a plus for open positions, but they're willing to train for those without experience. At Tractor Supply, they work hard, have fun, and make money. Apply today at tractorsupply.jobs.
I'm Smokey Bear, and I made an assistant to help you out because only you can prevent wildfires.
Hey, Assistant Smokey Bear, call me